Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the HeelanHub podcast, a show for small business owners. I'm Dan Heelan, and today is just me talking to you as it's 2025 about new businesses. So hopefully you had a great Christmas and a good New Year period. And I wanted to come on and talk about, because it's this time of year where everybody's booting up something new for 2025, I do a new one, which I've not done before, which is talk about some businesses that maybe you'd want to think about twice before starting, I guess is the best way. I mean, the title will be something like 3 businesses, not to start in 2025. And absolutely, I'm not saying you actually shouldn't start them, because we work with some very successful people doing exactly these type of businesses. It's just when we look at it overall, these are ones where we have such a tiny success rate. And that's really what I wanted to do the podcast on, is just to give you food for thought, I guess. If you've been online over the festive period looking at new businesses you might want to start, this hopefully will resonate with you. And if maybe you're in business already and you just wanted to listen in to see, what I thought about which businesses were tougher, then there's something in this for you as well. So hopefully you will enjoy it. Let's go on with it. So a quick reminder as well, we also booted up a YouTube channel for the podcast separately, just in the background, so you can actually watch me do this. I mean, it's not much different. It's just, I know some people like to listen or watch online rather than necessarily in their ears, depending on what they're doing. So we've just put it up in various places. So if you do want to check that out, get a HeelanHub on YouTube and you'll find me there talking away at the camera, or not looking quite at the camera as we're talking about this. So there's another way to do that, and click subscribe if you can. And just make sure you've got us across all the channels. So anyway, before we get into this then, let's just look at the criteria. How did these businesses make the list? Well, I looked at it and I was like, how challenging are they to start? How long does it take to gain customers? The ability to start it as a side hustle and grow into a full-time deal, the ability to be easily profitable, but mainly and absolutely, and this is why the list took me 2 seconds to write it down when I did it, is what's the actual success rate we've seen with these businesses? Because these particular ones I've picked, we see a ton of. And you think, I've been doing this for about 18 years. I think I'm in year 18. So it's thousands of businesses across that time. And these businesses pop up time and time again. And the success rate is minimal. It really is. However, there are absolutely, and we work with some really successful people who do these things. So don't be put off if you are thinking of doing it. I suppose the takeaway for you, if you're thinking, this was the business I was going to start, is just do your research and take it easy. And I'll talk to you into some specifics as we go through. And then I did also think on the list about what's the potential to scale. So I think I might do a show actually where I talk about taking those criteria, which ones are good, where do we see the success? Because I don't like necessarily just doing the negative ones, but we'll give it a go and start at this end, just because I thought, which one's more important to put out, the not to starts or these ones are a cool idea, and we see a lot of success, and I thought actually the not to start would hopefully maybe make some people think twice before doing them. So again, I make no mention of enjoyment, because I think where it comes to a small business, the enjoyment of the business itself is very much down to the individual entrepreneur to find out what they like doing. And some people have a really successful business they don't necessarily enjoy, but then you've got ones that love their business but don't make any money. So just, either side of it. Okay. And I think as well, you'll be surprised with a couple of these, because you will have known people, particularly one of these, where you think, I don't understand why that would be in the list, but I will talk about it. So let's get straight into it then. In terms of the first business that I would say we see loads of and people want to start, and it's mainly because of YouTube. I think there's a lot of YouTube videos out there telling you to start these things as passive income, and passive income always makes me laugh as a small business owner, because there's very little things that are actually passive. There are some businesses that do it, but most of them still take a lot of maintenance and effort and back end and bookkeeping or whatever the case may be to deal with. So, and that first business would be anything relating to sort of Amazon. So you might have heard the term FBA, the Fulfilled by Amazon service, but basically selling on Amazon, drop shipping, that's related. And then also I would chuck in there print on demand as well. And there's tons of videos telling you to do these things and saying, okay, look, you can boot these up. It's low amount of money. It's really easy, and you'll just create some income. And actually, that's not untrue, because you will. However, we find over time they just fold. And the biggest areas when people quit really well-paid jobs to do this, and they haven't quite worked this out, and they've not tried it. So I think if you are going to do this and you're absolutely adamant, or you even have booted it up and started it, do it. But I would urge you to think carefully about making the leap into doing it full time before you've had a chance to really look at it. Because the issue we see with these is it's very competitive space. There's tons of people doing it, and there's a lot of big players, particularly like foreign players, who can do it cheaper than you a lot of the time, because the margins, the amount of money you make after your cost, is tiny. And as a result, people make a lot less money than they think, and they have to sell high volume, so high quantity of the actual products to make any money. So if you imagine, like, let's just say you made, I don't know, £5 off each thing, you'd have to sell a lot of things at £5 to even pay for the overhead of running probably your limited company and your website bills and your software bills and the rest of it before you even get paid. And then when you do make that money, it takes ages for you to ever see a profit, because normally what you'll want to do with those initial bits is you'll probably be thinking, okay, I'll put this back into my inventory and buy some more stock, and it goes round and round and round. And then actually getting a payout from these places can be quite difficult. And what we find is with the profits and actually making money is there's always hidden costs that you don't realize that are actually in the deal. So particularly with FBA and things like that, people will do it and they think they understand it, but they really, once they get it, they're like, oh yeah, do you know what? It's not as much money as I thought. And again, you might think, well, I'll do all my research, but honestly, we work with so many owners and they can't believe when you finally produce the accounts, almost don't believe them. They're like, that can't be right. And then you do a couple of examples and they're like, oh yeah, it is a lot less, or I forgot about VAT, or I forgot about this. And the margins, the actual profit you make per item is really, really small in the majority of cases. So just think about that. And as I said, big one for me is the cash. You don't really see the cash. So when people are thinking of taking the leap to doing this full time, quite often then they'll end up just running out of money and they can't live. And that's why we tend to see them fold, is they're just never that exciting. But big caveat, as I said at the beginning, you will have successful people that have done this. We've got plenty of owners we work with who run successful businesses like this. But I mean, they are doing big numbers in terms of getting that kind of traffic through the website, getting through Amazon, and actually doing those sales. So that would be the first one. If you're considering that, by all means do it, but just, take it easy. Have a look, see if you enjoy doing it. And I think with all small businesses, if you're going to start them out, is just trying to carve an amount of money out that you're going to lose, or that you think, I'm comfortable losing, on this. It's a punt, basically. And you might back yourself, sure, but I think it's nice to go, look, if I'm going to put £5,000 in for the original inventory, then that's what I'm going to do. And if it folds and I've learned something from it, that's fine. What's really dangerous, I think, and I've seen it with people, I remember when you could borrow money really easily at low interest rates, a client who went to 3 different banks at the same time and asked for 25 grand, they all gave him the 25 grand, so 75 grand. He chucked it all in. The business fell to bits. He ended up bankrupt, or certainly in an IVA. I don't know if he ever ended up bankrupt in the end, but he, and it's all because he just could get his hands on cash, went all in and hadn't really tested the market. And again, he was only making a margin in this thing. It's a very similar business of 10%. So it just never went in a good place. So just bear it in mind. Now, the other one, so that's drop shipping, FBA, Amazon, and print on demand, those kind of places. The next one, and this is probably the shocker of the one, is I'm going to say property businesses. And you might find that's like insane. Like everyone knows that property makes loads of money. And actually, yes, for long-term wealth creation, we see a lot of people who have done very well for themselves over the time on this. So it's not necessarily talking about property as an industry. It's more talking about being a property startup. And the reason is the number one type of property entrepreneur, I guess, that we see is when they've done normally a course, they've spent multiple thousands of pounds on a course for property, sometimes 25 grand to learn how to be a property guru. And then they've got no money. So then what happens is they come into the market and they get taught 2 strategies. They're called rent to rent and sourcing is the normal 2 ones that you hear about. And there's this idea that you can have no money, but you can go to people with properties and say, I'll rent it out for you. And you make a small margin on renting it for them and managing it. And you give them a fixed fee. Or sourcing, where you go and find property deals that are actually quite lucrative and you connect those deals for a fee to somebody that wants to buy a property and invest, and you do that. Now, again, there are some people that have done this, but it's a very, very small percentage. And normally what happens is the average startup will come in and say, well, I've been advised I should have a holding company, a limited company for my sourcing, a limited company for my rent to rent, and probably a limited company when I finally get around to investing in properties. And from our end, that's all great. But all those, you're talking 3-4 limited companies there that all have ongoing fees, management, bookkeeping that you need to do or you need to pay someone to do. And it's just not needed half the time. And again, in terms of property sourcing and rent to rent, I've seen one client in those 18 years make that work. Everybody else, without fail, that's come has shut those companies down. So just, if you're going to do it, maybe think about taking it slowly. Maybe think about, do I need those limited companies early? Or can I just go and play around and see what I get and not worry about it when you've got your first deal lined up, and have a look. But and I think we see the most success flipping that on its head with people that have got cash behind them that want to enter the property market and start building a property business that way. So I think just if you're one of those people with no money behind you, that's where we see that actually these things don't work out very well. So I'm not saying I don't get into it. I mean, I've got property interests and I've got loads of clients that have got property interests. And I would say that from the experiences we see in my own experience, I wouldn't call it passive. Definitely wouldn't call it passive. But there is, there is money to be made there. But yeah, if you've got no money and you spent it all on a course to do it, and maybe if you're thinking of going on a course, think about the money you're investing there and what that restricts you to do with that cash otherwise, then yeah, just think about those things and think, okay. But yeah, it sounds weird, doesn't it, for property, because people generally think property is the thing to get into, but we see so many failures of business startups and shutdowns of these things, particularly where sourcing and rent-to-rent strategies. And if you've not heard those terms, you want to understand a bit more than my little explanation, you can literally Google them. There's so much information on them. I mean, I think there's a book behind me that probably was quite good at talking about it as well. So, and of course, these courses then normally want you to have ongoing coaching or support networks that can be expensive. And if you've got money, I think there's a real good opportunity there to do some good stuff with those people, for sure. I mean, there's plenty of successful people that have done those, but again, they've got money behind them when they do it. So yeah, just think about that. So that would be weirdly absolutely make my list. It's funny when we have that through a prospect list and someone says they want to do it and they say they've got no money to start it up, it normally is kind of a flag that says this business isn't going to go very long, because it is minor. But again, we work with some very successful property people, so it does also can work the same as business one. And then the third business is a bit of a bucket more than a specific business, and that's any business that you don't understand. Now, I think there's this feeling that, and there's conflicting advice on this and opinion on this, about that you need to be really enthusiastic about the business you want to do, and you've got to love what you do, and that absolutely helps. But my experience of working with owners is you don't have to love it. You do have to want to do it every day, or have the discipline to want to do it every day. But I think more it's understanding the business. And quite often this comes with franchises, for example. So we see somebody they've woke up and they've always wanted to be a business owner, but they've never really had a business idea. They've never fallen into it. So then they see this opportunity. Normally it's been an advertised opportunity to say buy a franchise or something like that. And they'll go and they'll pick up this franchise, but they have no idea of how the actual business works. They've not worked in it. They've got no network or connections in there. And actually, they don't know how it works. So I'll give you an example. This one, I'll just kind of anonymize it, I guess, but it was a website development. Let's call it website development franchise opportunity. The person really wanted to be in business, picked up this franchise, but they don't know anything about web development. And the web development's all done in the back office of a centralized franchise. So really what they are is a kind of like a glorified salesperson who takes a commission off these things that they sort out. But of course, they can't really have any decent conversations with the client or anybody technical because they don't really know the technical aspects of it. And when you a small business starting off and people don't know you, and the brand, even if it's a franchise, might not be very well established, sometimes you're just going to sell on passion, or you're going to sell on credibility, or you're going to sell on technical expertise. But often these things don't appear in somebody that doesn't really understand the business. So I can think of a couple of other retail shops that people have taken on, for example, like maybe cafes or shops selling things. I don't want to go too much detail because some of these people have been ex-clients and might watch, and they just didn't really understand the business model very well. They didn't understand it enough to make it successful when times got tough. And then on top of that, if you don't have the passion and you don't enjoy it, there are times, and there'll be plenty of small business owners who are listening to this that know this, that sometimes you just have to put in a load of hours. And if you don't like it, or you've not got the discipline to do it, that doesn't come. There's nothing in the tank by the time you get there and you want to do it, and the business will just fail as a result. If you won't put the hours and the time in to save your business, no one else is going to. And so passion and excitement and some interest in the business is obviously going to be quite key from what we see here in terms of looking at those people that do make it, because those times do come. You've got to put the work in at various different places. The other thing about not understanding the model is the other way of doing it. I mean, franchises is just one thing. The other thing we'd see quite frequently is that somebody will buy an existing business that's meant to be established, and we do some due diligence work here to help people through those processes and things like that when they're buying them. And sometimes actually I've done it in the past. I've said several times, I don't actually think you should buy this business, and someone's done it anyway because they are passionate about it and they see potential. But the biggest worry is if you don't really understand it. And I don't mean you don't have to be a super expert in it, but you need to understand the basics, and you need to be able to roughly be able to do it. I think in the majority of cases, we're talking small businesses here, because otherwise what you end up being vulnerable and exposed to, and we've seen this time and time again, is a key team member from the business that you're buying then doesn't want to be there, doesn't like you, thinks they're putting all the effort in, and even though they're taking none of the risk, think they're putting all the effort in and they're doing it or running it all and getting no rewards. They might be well paid, whatever else the case may be. And then you're vulnerable because you feel like you can't tackle that person's attitude, or maybe they're toxic within your team, and you need to see them out the door, but you're worried about not being able to do that. And we see quite a few businesses where that fails because of those kind of things, where somebody's really vulnerable around that position and they just don't know enough. So I think for me, if you're looking to start a business, where we do see the most success is where someone's done this as a career. So they've done it like they've been in a career for 10 years doing this thing. They've got all the contacts. They understand the industry well. They understand 90% specialists in this particular area, say, and they come out and they start a business doing it themselves, and they'll do well. History tells us that they will generally do well. Not always, because being in business is an interest in learning the experience and a new skill that no one teaches you, but generally they're far, far higher success rate. So if you are thinking, look, I just want to be a business owner, and you don't know what to do, maybe just do some more jobs. Find out what you actually enjoy doing, sectors you enjoy working in, and maybe there will become a business opportunity out of doing that later than necessarily kind of forcing the issue, because that's where we see it. I mean, I can think of so many franchises, smaller franchises. I'm not talking about Subways, McDonald's, and some of these big ones. They're well-established brands that tend to do quite well, but they're expensive, very expensive to get going. But these little ones where really, are you gaining any benefit from being in the franchise? I think sometimes that's very arguable. And you wake up tomorrow and think, oh, I'm going to be driving instructor is a bad one. I actually did that for a while, and I don't think that's not actually a bad one. You can make some money off that. But driving instructor franchises, I've seen dance school franchises, vehicle repairs. I'm just trying to think. There's loads of them over the years, and none of those people are clients anymore because the business has failed, because you sometimes get stuck buying from the franchise or anything else. So, estate agencies, things like this. So, what else have you got? I mean, utilities warehouse isn't really a franchise, but that's obviously one of those ones where, it cannot fill. I mean, there's some very successful people there, but that's probably a different business model in the kind of, those kind of things. But so, I think the takeaway point to this is that if you're looking to start a business, don't force the issue. Do something at least know, even if you're not necessarily passionate about it. I think the knowledge is going to be really, really, really important, and that's where we see the most failure rates, is when that isn't the case, is that the knowledge isn't there. So hopefully I've explained that well enough. But yeah, just any business that you don't understand really at a very detailed level. You don't necessarily have to be an expert. You think of business the size that we run here, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in every element of the business, but I'm a 90 to 95% expert, and I've done all of those roles over the years. I could literally do them. If anybody was ill or got hit by a bus tomorrow, I could do them. Maybe not as well, but I could absolutely do them. So, and I think that's really, really important. And that's where we see a lot of successes in those areas. So there we go. So, but I think whatever you do, do check out, hopefully there'll be a future podcast on some positive ones of where we do see some good successes, and just enjoy the journey. I think it's going to be exciting, but I think, and we've done other content on this, lots of it over the years, about talking about just planning it, not necessarily 100-page business plan or whatever, but just putting some figures into a spreadsheet or a bit of paper and just working out, does my business model actually work? And on top of that, how long can I go without any money? Because for the reasons we just said in these business examples, you won't be getting any money out of them for some time. And as a result, you've got to be able to live somehow. And that's why so often in the modern day, you see this idea of a side hustle, this a side business that you're doing and building up to a point where you can leave your main job. And we help so many owners with that transition, where they're like, okay, now I'm going to go and make the leap. I need to be a limited company. I want to go do this full time. How do I best tax efficiently do this? All that kind of stuff. So, and that's an exciting journey, but I think it's more of an exciting journey when you've proven the concept. I think it's a scary journey to ditch your well-paid job to go and do, say, an Amazon thing, because you saw the YouTube video and you like the idea of this aspirational idea of going to the gym 4 times a week mid-morning and working 3 days a week and all those kind of things that are shown on these videos for the very, very small percentage of people that do it. So there we go. There's some thoughts anyway for 2025. If you have enjoyed this show, make sure to subscribe via your favorite app and or on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. You can also review us on those apps, which would be great. If you go to YouTube, if you've got any comments actually about your own experiences, if you've done this, do go. Probably the easiest way to share that with kind of the community is go onto the fledgling YouTube channel for HeelanHub and drop it in the comments of this particular video. But if you do get 5 minutes on the apps to review us, it really helps our visibility. I'd really appreciate it, and share that. That'd be amazing. Thank you very much. For more business insight and tax tips, you can sign up to our HeelanHub Herald, which is an email direct to your inbox every couple of weeks. If you go to heelanassociates.co.uk, so that's Heelan, Heelan, and then scroll around for a bit on the website, you get prompted with a box so you can put your email and you'll be signed up, and that'll come through to you. If you do want any more to see what we're up to and any more of these type of content, you can visit our main YouTube channel. That's probably the biggest one there. We do loads of videos and loads of content over the years on there that talks in more depth about all these type of things. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and all the other places, Facebook, that you normally find a business. And we're active on all of those channels. If you are starting a business and you do want to get yourself off in the best start, I'd always recommend getting some accounting software. There's a few of them behind me, but the one that if you asked around the office, that most people would recommend here is Xero. And currently, due to our partnership with Xero, if you go to heelanassociates.co.uk/Xero, you can get yourself a ridiculously discounted license there. So get yourself off in a good in the best way possible. That's it. Have a profitable and tax efficient couple of weeks, and I'll see you in the next one.